Screw.
Hey, Rachel.
Oh, yeah, we've got quite a few people on this. Looks like. Are we on camera for this meeting?
Yeah, we're here. I'm not fighting on that.
Friends, before we get started, just a reminder that you may want to make sure your microphone is muted. What a crew we've got. Look at this.
Good evening, all. We're going to wait just to we'll give one more minute for folks to gather in. We have a lot of information, but I know folks are coming from a lot of different directions, so. So, Lori, the name of your furry friend is?
It's Queenie.
Queenie. An Episco cat.
Episcopal. Episcopal cat with tortitude.
We have the Episcopal cat's mama and sibling.
I have to say, I think she's a Magnificat.
The dad jokes.
Excellent. Well done. Well played.
All right. We are 3 after the hour, so I'm Alan James, the Interim Executive Officer of the Diocese. It is a pleasure to meet with you all. I thank you for taking your time out of your day to engage in this conversation. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch the videos that were released last month at the end of August. And all of those are linked in the email that you saw that brought you to tonight's town hall. So if you've not yet seen them, I do encourage you to go back. There's going to be a little bit more detail in them that you're going to get tonight, just because we're trying to do what was in 4 videos now into one session. Let us begin with prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give thanks for the gift of this diocese and the congregations of which we are a part. We give thanks for your presence in the Spirit in ways that shape and form us and empower us to be your hands and feet in the world, to care for others, especially in this time of great anxiety, confusion, and discord. I pray that you might be with us tonight and all that is said and heard. We give thanks for the way that you have guided and protected this diocese through these last years and through many changes and evolutions. May all that we do give honor and glory to you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. So I'm not going to go into full detail about it, but I do want to encourage you, if you've not gone, to take a look at the organizing principle, which is really kind of a mini mission statement that we did as a shortened process to guide us over these next 2 years, but really preserve the right for the first bishop of the Diocese of the Great Lakes to engage with us in an extended mission vision process when they arrive in a few short months. We'll be here in no time. But at the heart of that is, in the first sentence of that organizing principle, is that we are called to embody the love of Jesus Christ with grace, hope, and joy. For those of you who like mnemonic devices, grace, hope, and joy goes in alphabetical order. So we are called to embody the love of Jesus Christ with grace, hope, and joy. That sentence guides all that we do and is an anchor for that, including this structural stuff that I'm going to talk about tonight. The purpose of structure is to help provide an infrastructure for doing mission and ministry, for the way we collectively embody the love of Christ. So the first thing that I want to talk about is and there's a lot of information in these two parts, and so I'm going to go through and explain a bunch of stuff, and then I'll stop and we'll take time for questions. So the mission region structure, many of you are used, we have collaboratives right now. We've had convocations and deaneries beforehand. If you've been in other parts of the church, they could be mission areas. There are all kinds of different names, but it's a intermediate structure between life in the congregation and the full diocese. And as our canon says, right, the canons that were adopted last October had sort of 2 points about mission regions. The first one was simply that we would have them and that the standing committee would articulate what sort of shape and form they would take. And the second piece of the canon spelled out their purpose, which I'm going to share with you here tonight. The mission region provides a vehicle for congregations, emergent communities of faith, companion ministries, programmatic organization, and seasonal chapels in proximity to each other to offer mutual support, share best practices, and collaborate on program projects and activities in furtherance of their respective missions and the mission and vision of the diocese. Which is to say, mission regions are it's what they're about is in the 2 words. It's about mission and ministry. It's not about governance. It's not about make work. It's about how do we gather in a way that furthers our ability to do the mission of Jesus Christ that we're called to do. And also that it's about the whole region. That it's not each region, it's not simply that what happens in the sort of pinpoint locations of the current congregations or ministry we have, but how do we incarnate the episcopal presence across all parts of the region. We have counties in the diocese. When I put the map up here, you'll see this. We have counties in the diocese that have no episcopal presence. And so one of the questions that I think we need to ask as we sort of move forward is, how do we change that? I mean, I know we have a lot of things to figure out about how we support our smaller congregations and how do we sort of change the tide of church growth. But I think we need to be proud and bullish about the product that we have, which is the Episcopal sort of brand in the best sense of that phrase. And how do we take the love of God and the love of Christ as we understand it into these other parts of the state of Michigan that are part of the diocese. So the standing committee accepted a recommendation from a subcommittee, the sort of transition leadership conference committee, about how we might structure ourselves. And the first thing I want to point to and share here is, so we have divided ourselves into 10 different mission regions. Now, as we were doing this, there were sort of 2 things that we had to balance out. The first is the size of the geographic footprint of the area of each mission region and how many sort of congregations and people are available. Because if the area is either too large or there are too few people and congregations in a particular region, either of those situations can be an impediment to ministry. And so we tried to balance that out as we sort of divided the diocese into these 10 regions. Now, I will say that this is the map as it is right now that we're starting with. But we recognize that when we when any body tries to decide how it should be across the whole state, there are things that we don't know about both pre-existing relationships within and between congregations and general sort of cultural ways that people look in those areas. So for instance, I spent a number of years right on the border between Cuyahoga and Summit County, between Cleveland and Akron. And the people right across the border, even though they were closer to the south and folks were to the east or west, because they were in a different county, they looked towards Akron as opposed to Cleveland. So we have a similar type, we may have a similar type situation. This era right here about St. John's Otter Lake sort of is not quite geographic representative because Otter Lake actually straddles the county line there. And so we have placed St. John's Otter Lake in the Mission region where it geographically lies. But, we will sort of engage in conversation and listen to them about, they may say, look, that made sense to do it that way, but we actually have more relationship with these congregations to the north of us. And so we would like to move. And so there's a process by which a congregation can ask diocesan council to move from one mission region to another. Now, again, we'll need to keep in mind when council makes that decision about sort of issues like critical mass and footprint, but it is to say there is some flexibility here in this map as we live into it. And in fact, I would say that's true about all of this around the mission regions, that Standing Committee has approved sort of this process, but in conversation with constitutions and canons, the recommendation was that we not put any of it in the canons yet so that we can have time to sort of live into it. And it's easier for Standing Committee to make an adjustment sort of mid-course than have to wait for the next convention and bring about a canonical change. So in the mission region, there are sort of two different structural pieces. The first is that we will once again have deans who will have a role in each mission region. So there are 10 different deans, and those roles are sort of threefold. First, that particularly in sort of critical time or an emergency situation, if the bishop's not available, the dean may respond as sort of an extension of the bishop's pastoral ministry. We have a large diocese, bishops travel a lot, and so we want to have someone who can sort of go as a representative of the bishop who is in closer proximity to any situation that arises. So that will be one role that the dean will do. A second one is that the deans will begin to be the ones who convene clericus, the gathering of clergy, active and retired priests and deacons in any mission region, for a regular time of fellowship and prayer, continuing education, whatever sort of programming they so desire. So the deans will be doing that instead of, for the last number of years, that's been the responsibility of a staff member, whoever the regional canon was. So that role is changing to the deans. And then the third thing is that the deans will meet regularly, probably every other month, with me, and eventually I would presume either the bishop or the bishop's designee when we move into that chapter of our shared life, as another layer of sort of communication feedback loop. We have formal structures like Standing Committee and the Diocesan Council, who obviously will continue to be in conversation with me and the diocesan staff, but we wanted to add another layer because one can never have too much communication. And so the deans who are in regular sort of network with leaders in their mission region will meet regularly with me. That allows communication both from myself and the diocesan staff and broader diocesan leadership structures to the deans and the mission regions. And it allows communication and information to come from the broader diocese back to myself personally, the diocesan staff, and other parts of the diocesan leadership team. Now, if you will give me a second, I need to change one part of my screen. And this will come out in written form this week. but to say here are the deans of the 10 mission areas. Let's see if I can make that. Oops. A little. Sorry, I'm trying to balance between making it larger and then, but still having everything visible. Hmm. There we go. Nope, I still need one more. So there are the 10 deans for each of the areas. I'm not sure why I've lost the congregations in Mission Region 6, but Mission Region 6 is the one that goes along the Lake Michigan shoreline from I want to say, oops, this actually, there we go. All right. Everybody see theirs? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing again. So the other piece of the mission region structure is that we will once again have, they have various names, but a mission region council. Now, the purpose of this council, again, like the mission regions, is to support mission and ministry collaboration, networking, sharing of information and ideas and inspiration, lessons learned in a mission region. So in a formal sense, the structure talks about having 2 representatives from congregations and it being led by a council chair and vice chair. So not the dean, except for the initial calling meeting to get someone elected, but there'll be 2 separate folks who will sort of convene and facilitate the work of the regional council. And then the regional council will be made up of representatives from each church and summer chapel, companion ministry or programmatic organization in that sort of mission region. And with that, I'm going to pause. That's sort of the quick overview about mission regions and ask any questions. And because we go across a couple pages, I will ask you to use the raised hand feature so we make sure that we don't miss anyone that has a question. Any questions about mission regions? Jerry.
Yes, a bit of a comment first. This seems like we have gone right back to where we started in the Eastern Diocese. Because when the Eastern Diocese was created in 1995, we were divided into 4 convocations. And the convocations were designated as the mission appendages, if you will, of the diocese. I am quite familiar with that. I spent 6 years as the first treasurer of the Saginaw Valley Convocation. Now, looking at the current map, I am a parishioner at St. John's Alma, and that map has put us in Mission Region 3. We are the only Legacy Eastern Diocese congregation in that mission region. And apart from some connections with St. John's Mount Pleasant, we really have no prior connection with any of the other organizations in that county. On the other hand, if we turn 180 degrees and look east, we're looking into Mission Region 8, I believe it is. And that is most of what used to be the Saginaw Valley Convocation. There are a few others that have gotten peeled off. But you mentioned St. John's Otter Lake. They were also part of that convocation originally as well. And as I listen to the structure, it sounds like the major difference between mission regions and the old convocations in Eastern Diocese is that now the diocese is holding the purse strings. Our initial structure in the Eastern Diocese was that the gathered income was divided in exactly half, and one half went to the diocese for administrative and episcopal office expenses, and the other half went to the convocations, divided into equal shares for mission work. Now, in the Saginaw Valley convocation, we were actually the first out of the starting block because we inherited a mission worker from a previous grant from the Diocese of Michigan. And we had to pick her up immediately, which meant I had to learn how to do taxes and all that sort of stuff. But that was at one point a bit of an issue in the Eastern Diocese because the diocese decided they needed more money and they proposed a resolution to change the sharing to 60-40, which we defeated in convention. Now, looking at the structure there, I know that there is a mechanism that we could request to be moved from Mission Region 3 to Mission Region 8, although I understood from reading the material that the responsible body was not standing committee, but diocesan council.
Correct.
So anyway, I would be very curious to know if there were other particular reasons for placing us in Mission Region 3 rather than Mission Region 8. The one thing that I can see there, we are probably regarded as a distressed congregation. We lost our building through some of Bishop Todd's manipulations. And the only thing I will say about that is I'm looking forward to the healing service in the next couple of weeks to see if I can find a way to forgive Todd for that. But one of the, and we also lost our major mission activity in Alma for the same reason.
Okay.
But if we have to somehow close, consolidate, or otherwise find some way to deal with our dwindling congregation, probably the most logical thing for us would be to join together with St. John's Mount Pleasant, which is also in Region 3. That's the only real reason I can see for having us in Region 3. So I would be very interested to hear from you or anyone else there who can speak to it, why we ended up where we are.
Sure. I think, again, sort of as part of a sort of general memory, is I think there were, I would say probably two things we were considered and one thing we did not consider. We really, on the one hand, we obviously recognize issues around Legacy East and Legacy West, but diocesan leadership is really moving to a place where we don't make decisions based on Legacy East, Legacy West. We are the Diocese of the Great Lakes. We are one. And so while we were conscious at one level, we didn't really want to be guided by, well, that's Legacy East and this is Legacy West, as we were making decisions about how mission region lines were drawn. I would say the two things probably from my memory that probably led towards Alma being part of its starting mission region is one, that issue I talked about in the beginning of critical mass, of having enough sort of congregations and people involved, that because that mission region is pretty sort of sparse as far as the number of congregations given the footprint of the area. And then the second thing is, as you have talked about, sort of the recognition of potential collaboration with St. John's and Mount Pleasant. Now, having said that, I also want to reiterate, nothing about mission region says one cannot collaborate with a congregation on the other side of the mission region line, right? The mission regions are to support collaboration, but they're not to define where collaboration happens. And so I think I would, at one level, sort of ask, hearing sort of your thoughts and concerns, that unless there's a dramatic reason why you need to move right away, that you sort of live with this possibility and see what happens. And if it doesn't really seem to make sense and there's a strong try to move back towards the congregations, towards sort of the east of where you are, then the folks, the leadership of St. John should talk with Diocesan Council, would be mine. Is that helpful?
Not entirely, but
Okay, so I would welcome, because we do have sort of limited time, I would love to have continue this conversation with you one-on-one. And so let me give you a call later in the week and we can sort of talk more about your particular situation if you'd like.
yes, that would be helpful, I think.
Okay, I will do that. Any other questions about mission regions? All right, well then let's move on. The other big thing that I want to talk about is the reorganization of diocesan staff. So when I was called into this position as the interim executive officer, the standing committee charged myself and the staffing and structure committee of the diocese to work together in taking a look at how our diocesan staff is functioning, how it's structured, what are the strengths, what are the challenges, where are there inefficiencies, where are there gaps in what's being done, and what sort of new model might we consider. There were three basic assumptions that guided our work and our recommendations. The first one is, given that we started in April of this year, it was going to be 2 years-ish until there was a bishop on site. And so we needed to address shortcomings in the way the staff was structured, that 2 years was too long of a time to allow systemic issues and inefficiencies to perpetuate themselves. However, in 2 years, which is actually both a long time and not a long time, we would have a bishop diocesan. And one thing I know about bishops is they have a strong sense about how they would like their staff organized. And so it would be important for us to not invest too much in massive overhaul of the diocesan staff into one sort of particular vision of what we think the perfect is, because the bishop is likely to come in and want to do things slightly different, given their gifts, their perspective, the way they've seen things work in other places. And then the third factor was, relatively speaking, any recommendations that we would make to standing committee would need to be essentially budget neutral. We had a large deficit for this year, and Diocesan Council was going to be working to bring that down. So, for instance, there are many reasons. When we started the conversation around juncture, there was talk about, oh, well, when we come together, in addition to, we can take sort of the 3 regional canons of West, the canon of the ordinary of the East, and maybe with some fiscal efficiencies, be able to hire a 5th priest to divide sort of all the regional canon functions. Well, we have since found out, obviously, both that there's definitely not money for a 5th, and the reality is, given a variety of financial pressures, we can't even continue to have 4. And so we have 3 priests on staff doing that regional structural work. So it would not sort of be an acceptable sort of response to come back to standing committee as the working group and say, here's the problem, and the solution is we need to hire 2 more priests on the diocesan staff. There's just not the financial capacity for us to do that. Any recommendations we're going to make had to be essentially budget neutral. So the way staffing and structure went through this process, we started by interviewing 48, 49 people, diocesan and parochial leaders from across the diocese, a variety of viewpoints, to make sure that any recommendations we made were broad-based, not on sort of any one person's own personal experience. And so we gathered that, we took a look at what were both the common themes that we heard, and particular nuggets that, as we reflected on them, really stood out as something that we needed to address. So as a result, there were a couple steps in between, but for time's sake, I'm going to skip right to sharing this, which is the new organization chart for the diocesan staff, which we have begun sort of living into in a very real way yesterday. We've been gearing up towards it, and we're going to continue to live into it for time yet to come. This is not sort of a one-time light switch. We were old way, we were new way. So I want to lift up for you a few highlights about this. One of the first things that we saw in the current model, because the diocesan staff, as it was in April 1, was the result of sort of evolution and mutation over the last 7 years, where we went from 2 smaller, fully separate diocesan staffs to 2 separate staffs with 1 and then 2 bi-diocesan people. And then we moved into 2 staffs with some bi-diocesan staff members, but we functioned as 1. And then we moved into 1 staff, and there were some more folks who were functioning sort of across the whole diocese. But there was never a time where we really sort of stepped back and said, how are we going to organize ourselves with the staff that we have? And because of the way that happened in this evolution from moving from 2 staffs to 1, that when you look at sort of 8 of these sort of 9 top 2, these 2 tiers here where my cursor is going, all of them equally reported to whoever whether it was the bishop, the senior person, the standing committee when they were fully head of staff in an operational sense. And there's no organizational development person that would ever encourage you to have 8 or 9 direct reports to a supervisor. And so we broke it down. The 9 folks now on these 2 groups are still the program staff. In most ways, that is the leadership team within the staff that we function as a whole. We gather on Wednesdays for morning program staff, weekly program staff meeting. But we have broken out within that program staff 4 individuals who will serve as an executive team. One of the things that they're particularly responsible for too is having deep sort of knowledge of all things that are happening sort of down the organization tree, so that if I, or in due course, the bishop, need to have sort of a quick, short meeting, can gather those 4 individuals and process whatever the issue is. Amongst them, one of the things that we also recognized in the former model was there was no identified number 2, which had its own sort of challenges. And I'll talk more about the Director for Congregational Vitality later, but this person is identified as sort of the first among equals amongst the executive team. And in my absence, or in the absence of the bishop, they would have leadership of the staff. Now, right now it's called the Director for Congregational Vitality. There is a recognition when we have a bishop ordinary in residence, that this org chart is set up in such a way that this person could have a slight change in their portfolio and title and be what we're used to having as far as a canon to the ordinary. But because we have no bishop ordinary, it would be sort of a misnomer to have someone with the title of canon to the ordinary when we don't have an ordinary. starting on the left side to talk about some specific changes in roles and responsibilities. So this finance associate for the congregational support is a half-time position, and it is a reorganization. The way the finance office has been working for the last couple of years is with a full-time chief financial officer with 2 part-time bookkeepers, financial assistants. And because of that, all of the sort of congregation related questions for a variety of reasons went to Sarah Philo, our CFO, which created some prioritization challenges. And I'll acknowledge, and we heard this a lot in our interviews, and Sarah acknowledges it too, right? As Sarah was in the midst of doing all this extraordinary work around juncture from bringing 2 separate financial entities into one, she was also the person who was receiving literally hundreds of emails a week from congregations with very important and for them urgent questions related to finances, HR benefits, and so forth. And they were not receiving a timely response. And that was a structural issue, not a performance issue. And so one of the things that we've done in this new model, the finance for associate will still do some diocesan finance related work, particularly to sort of maintain appropriate internal controls in our diocesan finances. But the primary piece of their work will be congregational facing support. So questions around parish audits, about parochial reports, around CPG benefits for staff members in congregation. For instance, when there's a new hire or a new priest comes to serve, this person will be the one that helps them get enrolled in all the appropriate HR benefits around retirement and medical care and insurance. This person will also be one who understands parish finances, and so when there are questions, when a treasurer says, "We have this financial software, we hate it. What's out there? How can we change? What's recommended? What are other people using?" Or we have this particular question in our finances. This person can be a first line sort of responder. And if there are questions that that person doesn't know, then we can sort of turn to Sarah as CFO to get sort of additional support. But it's to sort of separate out diocesan financial matters and financial administrative support for congregations. Just a reminder, if you all can mute, please. So the next couple sort of departments, administration, communication, are similar to sort of that are currently structured. The next piece where there's a number of changes is in sort of the right third of this org chart tree, starting with the Director for Congregational Vitality. This person will lead what we're calling the Congregational Support Team. A big sort of paradigm shift is we're going to move from having 3 regional canons that are sort of geographically assigned, and anything going on in any congregation there that requires congregational support, vestry support, support of the priests or deacon in there, that always fell to whoever the particular canon was. And what we discovered is with the growth of number of congregations that the canons were responsible for and growth in their portfolios, that the model wasn't efficient, that we needed a smaller number of ratio of congregations to individual. So we are shifting from having 3 canons who sort of have responsibility in total for their own congregations to a team model where the Director for Congregational Vitality, the Director for Mission and Community Engagement, the Director for Vocational Discernment and Equipping, the Director for Formation and Camping, the Director for Communication, and the Finance Associate for Congregational Support will do 2 things. One, the 6 of them will have a direct relationship with a certain number of congregations as the diocesan staff liaison to that congregation. So again, taking the best of what we've learned from the regional canons about personal relationships, we're still going to make sure that there's some sort of one-on-one relationship between congregation and staff members. But it now, as a sort of being communication and various sort of portfolio experience, that part will be primarily communication. So each of these individuals will come to the congregation at least once a year. They will also be the person, if someone in your leadership team needs some help in some way, and they're not sure who in the diocesan staff or diocesan leadership team to call, you can call your staff liaison and they will help you figure out who the right person to talk to is. Or if for some reason you've been reaching out to another staff member and you're not getting a timely response, call your staff liaison and have them, in one sense, advocate for you, right? The sort of metaphor that we've used for this function as a staff liaison is that of the health advocate in the medical insurance world, right? Which is, you have a health advocate. When you need a new doctor and you need help finding who that is, you call your health advocate. Health advocate's not going to do the medical work for you, but they're going to help you find the right person. Or if you have issues between the doctor and your insurance company, you call your health advocate to get them to help bridge the gap between those other two entities. So that's sort of the staff liaison function. The other thing that this congregational support team will do is that we meet every Tuesday afternoon and discuss what's going on in the congregations in the diocese with whom we're operating. And when something comes up, say a congregation wants to think about, like Jerry, you were talking earlier, if St. John's Alma and St. John's Mount Pleasant want to talk about working together in some more creative, even structural ways, who on staff has experience working with congregations who have considered that, and what are the best practices in entering into that conversation? So that may be your staff liaison, but it may be someone else in the congregational support team, and then that other person will be the one that comes to help you. So the director for congregational vitality is the person who leads that team. Now, I want to say, and there'll be more news later, the Reverend Canon Sunil Shandy, who has been one of the canons on staff, has accepted a call to a congregation outside the diocese. There'll be a full announcement about that next week when he returns from vacation. But I just want to share that piece of it so that you'll understand that I'll be the one, at least for the interim, probably at least through the end of the year, who will fill this role on a temporary basis. One of the things that we have to figure out is how we might set that up as an interim, because it has the potentiality to be a canon of the ordinary role. It's important to those of us in leadership to do what we can to protect the ability for the bishop diocesan to hire their own canon of the ordinary when they arrive, without having to displace someone who's in that position. So when we do hire it, if we go forward with that call process, it will actually be for an interim director for congregational vitality other than me. Moving down the org chart into the sort of three positions below it, some of the changes that are here. Canon Mary Parish, Director for Mission and Community Engagement. Her portfolio to date in the prior model included beloved community and creation care, but no other sort of part of outreach, social justice, community engagement outside the walls of a congregation, that part of mission and ministry. And so we didn't have anyone on staff who was sort of a point person to support the mission, End Gun Violence Michigan, to work with congregations who had questions, looking for best practices around diaper banks, around food pantries, hot meal ministries, anything else. And so to expand the portfolio, and we have an issue that's arisen today with a man from the Diocese of Chicago who's been picked up by ICE and is in detention here in the Diocese of the Great Lakes. And so Nuria has been working with folks in Chicago and folks here in the diocese to see how we might support this individual in their current situation. The formation for individuals in the former model was sort of divided, it was divided by age. And so Karen Tracy Little worked with adult formation and the academy, and Director Mackenzie Beatty-Nill worked with youth, young adults, campus ministry, as well as Camp Chicagami. We're changing it from an age-based model to one of purpose. And so Tracy from now on will be sort of focusing as Director for Vocational Discernment and Equipping to be working with folks who are asking questions. How do I use my gifts? How do I use my experience in the church? Whether that's lay ordained, whether that's a lay licensed ministry like lay preaching or worship leading, or developing our understanding, training, and equipping of lay parish leaders, all those types of things, or even other forms of lay ministry, even if they're not licensed. So that will be the work that Tracy will be doing. Any sorts of internal spiritual formation. How do I grow in my faith? How do I wrestle with my questions about God and theology? How do I build on things that I've learned in the past? Lenten retreats or Advent retreats, Lenten programming, formation programs in churches. That internal spiritual formation stuff falls into the portfolio for Mackenzie. The one other area where there's been change in the staff structure significantly, and the one place that it's not dramatically, but it is the least budget neutral, and we have increased funding in a little bit, is around how we use our personal dollars to support ministry to children and youth in the diocese. So in the past, we initially had 4 regional youth ministers. For the last year or so, we've had 3 regional youth missioners. In the current budget that is coming to convention, there is funding for 1 youth missioner. And I will say this is in part because there were other changes to the diocesan budget that was bringing down our deficit. We still have a deficit, but also the feedback. If you were part of the town hall meetings around the budget in August, at that point in time, there was actually no funding continued for diocesan youth missioner. But given sort of the feedback and other things in the budget process, we have restored funding for 1 youth position to support Mackenzie in the work that she does with youth across the diocese. So it won't be a regional position any longer, but diocesan, 1/8 position. We've shifted the resources and added to it to create a position that will start the first of the year for a camp program manager to support our camping ministry, providing administrative, logistic, and sort of on-site leadership. And we're doing this for broad-based 2 reasons. One, all sort of falls under the rubric of how do we provide necessary best practice support in operating our camping ministry here in the diocese in an efficient way that expands capacity for what we do, supporting Mackenzie. Additionally, by having the second person, it will free, not completely, but it will free time during the year for Mackenzie to do non-camp related stuff more than she is able to do right now, right? That as that sort of lone sort of senior paid staff member around camping ministry, there's a significant chunk of the time where that is her sole focus. And so by having this second part, this other one will be a part-time position. It will allow some capacity for Mackenzie to do non-camp related stuff through more of the year. Obviously in high season of summer camp, that's what she will be doing. But sort of on the shoulders of that, we can expand the capacity for her to be doing other things. So I'm going to stop sharing this now. That's sort of a quick, high level sort of overview of the changes to the staff structure. Are there any questions? Easy peasy and best explanation you've ever heard, huh? All right. Well, I will say that as you go back and watch the videos, or if you have questions about this, oh, there's a question raised. Barb.
Okay, there we go. When will we know who our staff liaison is?
Okay. You should already know in the sense that emails have gone out to the clergy and wardens for whom we had names and contact information. If that has not happened for any reason, and there's been sort of a communication break, both contact me unless one of the staff members who here has the Saginaw churches. I don't remember who that is right off. I don't see any of the staff members who are here answering up, but we can get that to you.
That's okay. I just wanted to, I mean, we're
Yeah.
having a vestry meeting on Thursday, so we just that might be on the agenda. So thank you.
Right. I will get that information to you, Barb, so you definitely have it before the Thursday meeting. The other thing I'll say is that Rachel will soon be sort of placing, and if you want to speak to where people will be able to find that, Rachel, so the list for all of the for the parishes. We did sort of a direct communication to folks, sort of personal introduction to say, here's a change that's taking place, and I'm your staff liaison. Rachel, do you want to just add 2 cents where people will be able to find that list in the soon category?
In the coming week, we will add a who to call page on the website, and I'll share that on social media. It won't be done in time for the feast tomorrow, but that'll be a static place where you can go. And one of the things that you can look up is who your congregational support team liaison is there. Yeah, Barb, I have the information right here. I will send you an email to let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. And actually, I want to sort of chime in and thank Rachel for her work. Again, one of the things that we're going to add to the diocesan webpage is sort of a two-directional who to call. So both under all the staff members, it'll sort of say, here's what I do. And then there'll also be a place, if you're looking for someone for these things, here's who you call. So you don't have to read through all the bios till you get to the right person. And if at any point in time, you're like looking for something on that who to call list and you can't find it there, speak with Rachel, speak with your staff contact liaison, either of those people, and we will add people. That is a living, breathing document. And I will say that we are very committed. It may take steps and times and iteration, but again, one of our goals is to find ways to be more efficient and effective in making information accessible to you all. And so we will adapt that list of who to call as much as necessary.
Ellen, I thought of one more question. Who
Sure.
will be taking over like the transitions
Right.
stuff?
I will be the transition officer for the diocese for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
With support from some of the other congregational support team, particularly sort of in these early days. I know there's a number of things that are sort of coming up in both St. John. So working with St. John's, as you seek names, that'll be me. As other things happen in the Saginaw area, it may be me or someone else.
Okay.
Support conversations.
Thanks.
Yep. Betsy.
Hi, I just want to say I've attended the Zooms on the budget and also on these structural changes that happened a couple of weeks ago. We've already heard from our canon liaison, both the rector and me as senior warden. And I'm new here, so I don't have a lot of legacy history around either of these dioceses. But I want to really thank you, Father Allen, and the staff for the transparency that you all have made possible in how you've gone about this, your rationale behind it. It is what I do understand is that it has been a very complex process. And I feel that we have been very well informed on the decisions that were made and why they were made. So I want to thank you and the staff for that.
Well, thank you. And I will say, I didn't say this part of it in the beginning. When we did the review interviews with the congregation, we're aware of sort of communication issues over the last season, I'll just say, right? But in one of the things that conversations frequently might go like this: staff is working really hard, but, right? And so I'm very privileged to work with the staff that we have. I'm very grateful for the work that they are doing, and particularly as we go through this, sizable paradigm shift about how we do work, right? Any of you who know anything about church size theory, right? That churches of different size function different ways. That's true about dioceses as well. And so we have two smaller congregations, smaller dioceses and diocesan staffs who now have to figure out how to operate as a larger system. And we just operate differently. And there was a lot of one-off work that had to be done around juncture, and work that went beyond the capacity time-wise that our staff had to do. And it was all learning curve stuff because no one had done it before, right? No one had joined two diocesan accounting systems, which one might think it's just two accounting systems, but there were a lot of processes that were different, right? And so, we're well aware in sort of a non defensive, descriptive way. It's been a rocky road for a season. And we're really working together to figure out how to support the diocese and to allow everything to be on the table. And the staff has been very responsive, for which I'm very thankful, and we're all really excited about sort of the new possibilities. We recognize there still may need to be other changes, right? That similar to the mission regions, as we've talked with Molly and the standing committee, there are things that we may need to continue to fine tune, but there is a deep love of staff members for the congregations and the work you all are doing, and a deep, deep passion and desire to be effectively, efficiently supporting you all in new ways. Molly, as President Standing Committee, do you want to add anything here in either of these two parts?
Only to just say that it took us some time to really digest these, and we're glad that we took that time. These are, in some ways, these are major changes, and in some ways, as some of you have pointed out, these are tweaks, right? But we feel really proud of them, and I also want to recognize the amount of work that went into this by so many different committees, and so much by Alan. So we are grateful to him, and to everyone, especially to that personnel committee who worked very hard as well to work on this staffing and structure.
Thank you, Molly. Any other questions? All right. Well, I will say my email is Alan, ALAN, at greatlakesepiscopal.org. And as you sort of digest this material, if there are questions that you have, thank you, Rachel, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than willing to talk with you about things that have come to your mind and questions you might have. There are a few announcements that, while I have you here, that I want to share with you all. The first, and there was mention about this earlier, so the standing committee, in doing their own work with some of the other leaders of the diocese, recognized that there are many ways that we are at a new place, and there's a lot in the future that is very bright, and we're moving forward. We give thanks for the bishop's search committee that's underway. But all of that doesn't mean that all of us are at peace with things that have transpired over the last years. And that has to do, with a variety of ways. It might be with either the previous two bishops and their departures. It may be not around those specifically, but past bishops, other diocesan staff leaders, that there's still pain and unresolved wounds that need to be addressed. We're about healing and health and wholeness as the church. And so the standing committee is inviting the diocese. You may have seen this in writing, but we want to make sure everyone has the word to know about it. There are going to be 4 services over the next 2 weekends, both of them on Saturday, all of them on Saturdays, all of them at 11 o'clock. The ones this Saturday will be at St. Andrews in Gaylord and St. Thomas in Battle Creek. And on the 27th, they will be at St. John's in Grand Haven and St. Matthew's in Saginaw. And so we're calling this is their healing services. It's a service of offering our wounds to God. There'll be time for us to sort of do a little sort of personal work and not sort of, you're not going to be asked to stand up and say what your wound is, but in a liturgical way, say, I have pain, I need prayers, please pray with me, and an acknowledgement that there's pain in their wounds, and the group will pray, for all and sort of involved, and then we'll share in the Eucharist. And so I really encourage you, if you've got unresolved pain, and I'll say actually, although we're framing it in the context of about things diocesan that help us move to a place of health and wholeness, if you've got pain about anything, come. And if you know anyone who a time of healing and a time of being in a community that is praying for the Spirit to bring health and wholeness, please encourage them to come to any of these services. I will say, because of the nature of the service and what we're doing, we felt that they needed to be in person only. None of them will be live streamed. But we tried to both offer different days. So if you have a conflict on one of those 2 days, hopefully the other day will work. And we try to move them around the diocese. So hopefully one of the services will be at a time you can do it with as reasonable a drive as possible. And so those services, again, are 11 o'clock this Saturday and next Saturday. A service of offering our wounds to God. The standing committee, priests on the standing committee will be preaching. Some of the staff priests or leadership from diocesan council will be the celebrant for the services, as really as an offering of staff of diocesan leadership to the people of this diocese to find healing and wholeness that you and we need. I want to also share sort of a reminder that there will be a confirmation service at Emmanuel and Petoskey on November 8th. And you can sign up online if you or people in your congregation would like to be a part of that confirmation service. Also, if you are in the northeast part of the diocese or interested in traveling for a wonderful celebration on September 24th, Rachel's at 7 o'clock. Yes, 7 o'clock on September 24th. Matt Roney, actually, Matt's here. I could even have him. Well, I'm going to celebrate you here. Matt Roney, who's here with us, is going to be ordained priest and celebrate his new ministry as rector at Trinity Alpena. So if you are in the neighborhood or would like to get yourself in the neighborhood of Trinity, come be a part of this wonderful celebration of ordination and new ministry. And have a chance to see Bishop Ray from the Diocese of Northern Michigan one more time. He's actually coming down for both the ordination and the November confirmation. And again, we give thanks in word and prayer for Bishop Ray and all of the bishops who have helped walk us through these years, as much as we also give thanks for Bishop Ann being present with us for the first time this weekend in person. And her ministry with us the next year and a half. Any other announcements for the good of the diocese? Rachel, have I missed anything?
I just saw another Magnificat, but I think that's it.
Just because you know St. Francis Day is coming up here. I will just say to all, you still have time to plan it. I believe St. Francis Day pet blessings are one of the best evangelistic opportunities we have because pets are Switzerland. We can't get anyone in my condo building to talk in the elevator. It's like everybody else is invisible, but as soon as there is a dog in the elevator, everyone is allowed to talk to one another. It is the most amazing thing. It happens time and time again. So I encourage you to bless any pets you can and invite anyone and everyone you can to be a part of that. Mackenzie.
Speaking of pets and animals, there will be a St. Francis Zoo Day at the Saginaw Children's Zoo the first weekend of October. We would really love if people would come. We've done this for the last few years, and we've had upwards of like 40 people show up at the zoo. But also our team has put together some resources so that if you're not able to come to the zoo in Saginaw, you could do your own in your own space. And that information, there's information about it on Circle. It's gone out in the emails. I think it's probably also linked in the feast as well. And then I just want to put a shameless plug out there that not this weekend, but next weekend, there's a contemplative fiber arts retreat at Camp Chikagami that's happening. We still have space, so would love to welcome you. I am not a fiber artist, but I like to sit and talk with the people who are and look at what they do. And so I invite you to join us. And then the following weekend, so the first weekend of October, schedule conflict with St. Francis Zoo Day. We have a silent retreat that will be happening at Camp Chikagami as well. And there's still space for both of those. You can reach out to me if you need scholarship assistance or have any questions about that. And then also Nuria put something about Holy Ground for Whole Communities in the chat, and that's a really big deal.
Okay, so actually I'm going to do this since we're planned to go to 8:30. I'm going to ask staff members just to take no more than a minute. No more than a minute, but I just want to go through because it's always good to connect names and faces. So Mackenzie, why don't you start us off if you'd remind folks of your new portfolio and title, and anything else you want to say in a minute or less.
Oh my gosh, so much pressure. My name is Mackenzie Beatty-Nill. My pronouns are she, her. I serve as the director for formation and camping. So all things spiritual formation and our camping ministries of our diocese. And that also includes adult retreats, which often people don't think of when they think of camping. So I'm excited that a spiritual formation for all ages is in my portfolio because now I'll talk more loudly about the other opportunities that exist. And yeah, if you're at convention, I'd love for you to come and say hello. Also, we still have room for one more youth delegate. So if any of you have a high schooler in your midst, please send them my way like yesterday, because our canons allow for 8 and we have 7 applicants right now. And so I would love to have us filled up for our second convention. Thanks. I don't know what else to say. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Rose, and I am the director for communication. My portfolio isn't changing that much with the exception of the addition of being on the congregational support team. I am currently working with our bishop search and bishop transition committees. They're off to a great start. And so look for information about them in the feast tomorrow. And what else? Oh, I'm leading that silent retreat the first weekend of October. I am, in irony of ironies, an extreme introvert and a very public and, communication role. And so I'm looking forward to that weekend. I would love to have you with us if you have any questions about that. You can reach out to Mackenzie, as she said, or to me. And I think that's enough.
I do, before I go to the other staff members, I wanted to say, especially because as I was floating through, I see that we have a couple of the folks who have served as regional youth commissioners. And I wanted to be perfectly clear and loudly said that our youth ministers were doing good work, that the change in that part of the model was not about performance, but it was about sort of a strategic decision about how we use limited financial resources. And to thank both Jeff and Joel, who I see here, Beckett, who served in that role beforehand, I don't think is on board, and I don't think Rada is here either. But to the two of you and to two of them in absentia, thank you for your service in the past and through the end of this year. And I recognize that this is going to be a hard change for folks, but thank you. Nuri, I'm going to come back to you because I'm going to have Jess go next. Jess Kidder, would you be so kind to introduce yourself to folks?
Hi, I am Jess Kidder. I'm the program manager for Holy Ground for Whole Communities. And I'm so excited to work with congregations on revisioning their buildings and lands. And please send me any questions you have on the program, and I look forward to reviewing your applications.
Thank you, Jess. And Nuria.
Thank you. I'm emerging from the darkness. There was a light in my room when I started this Zoom. My new role is as Director for Mission and Community Engagement. My email is nuria@greatlakesepiscopal.org. And I am excited to continue to work with Jess on Holy Ground for Whole Communities. And if you have a church property building that you think could be more for the community that you serve, could possibly generate revenue, could possibly create deeper connections, could possibly increase the number of folks showing up in your space. That program exists to provide theological underpinnings and practical next steps for those explorations. It's what we got with our Lilly Grant. And Jess is going to tell you all about it and answer all of your questions. And so thrilled that she's been with us since February and we've been working together. The other thing, as Alan mentioned, today we did learn of an Episcopalian from the Diocese of Chicago who was detained this past Friday and is now being held at the facility in Baldwin. And one of the things that I came home to me with new strength today is we don't keep track of what languages clergy speak. So in our diocesan database, we have a request for a clergy pastoral visit. And I am currently working with English-speaking clergy and Spanish translators. And if there is, you all have more brains than I have. If any of you know a clergy person who speaks Spanish and might be willing to make a pastoral visit, I would like to know that person's name. I know a couple, but I don't know the whole diocese. And so I invite your help in that regard. And I think that's what I have a minute for.
Thank you all. One last final call. Any questions that have come to you in the intervening moments? Molly, would you please pray us out?
I would be glad to. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Thank you for responding, someone. Alan, just joking. Thank you, God, for this time, for this diocese, for this new work that we are doing together. Continue to strengthen us, encourage us, remind us of our gifted areas in our communities. And I pray that your Spirit may bless the work that we do together. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for your time in joining us here.